Hello, my name's Terry Brown. I'm currently the president and secretary of the Vietnam Land Clearers Association. And when I was in Vietnam back in 1968 and 69, I served as a roam plow operator, cutting jungle down. Actually, when I was at the induction center in Oakland, California, and I was told that I had a mechanical aptitude. It just, you know, they said what was it? The recruiter told me that I should probably check out the engineers, and so, given the fact that I knew if I were to go to Vietnam, I didn't want to have boots on the ground. Because I heard on the news all the time these guys stepping on mines and what have you, and that was my biggest fear at the time, as a 18-year-old. And I thought, let's see if we can get another job going, rather than being a grunt. So I applied for heavy equipment school and got trained on bulldozers at Fort Leonard Wood after my basic training that I took at Fort Lewis, Washington. And after that, they sent me 30-day leave and directly to Vietnam. They didn't waste any time. Yeah. And then when I got to Vietnam, I thought, since I was trained on bulldozers, that they'd put me in a construction outfit working on roads or airstrips or something like that with the bulldozer. No, they put me into something that was entirely foreign at the time. I never heard of land clearing, and I thought, what's that? And I found out that it's not constructive like building things. It was destructive, and it had to do with tearing down the jungles. And I wasn't familiar with that, but I learned pretty quick, and learned what it was all about and what it was for. And turns out, even to this day, looking back on it, that it was a noble effort. Generally, it was 45 days, yeah. And on some occasions where there was a little more demand on the operation, they would run it up to, I don't know, 55 to even 60 days, but that was rare. Yeah. And then after that, we would immediately head back to our main base camp and set up our equipment in the motor pool there and have what they call a stand down, where we would retool everything, pull the radiators out and blow them out and rework the engine. Just a lot of maintenance involved in order to get them all back up to speed and ready to go after 15 days, because that's what they gave us for the stand down. And at the same time, it was a renewal period for us, to where we would have time to do our laundry. Having dirty laundry for 45 days is something. So, we'd be able to clean up also, because in the field we didn't have a barber out there, so guys were getting kind of longer hair and letting their beards grow, and we looked like a ragtag bunch of bums. And at the end of the day, when we'd come in, we had, because it's dusty out there in the jungle when you're cutting and what have you, and we'd sweat because it was so hot. The heat from the dozer engine would come in on us, and then the heat of the day to add to it, so it was 100 degrees inside those cabs. We'd sweat, and the dust would cake on us, and over the course of an entire day there, when we come back in, we'd have it all over us, caked on, and it's like, is that you? We worked from sunup to sundown, and then brought the tractors back, and we spent another, it just depended, 4 to 6 hours in our night defensive motor pools, doing further maintenance so that we get the tractors ready to go and be operational for the next following day. So it was an around-the-clock type of thing, and we slept at night. Certainly, we had time to clean up and all that, but very limited. and it was probably the hardest work I've ever done in my life. It was more comfortable to just not wear a shirt.
Yeah.
But when we got back to our main base camp, our first sergeant made sure, you better get over to the barber shop, young man, and get that taken care of. So my outfit, they had a nickname for us. We had a guy in our outfit. He was I think our first sergeant at the time, I can't remember, named Brennan. So they called us Brennan's Animals. And they found out that they didn't want, later on they found out that they didn't want to have us come in, the different companies come in to the battalion area at the same time, because when we congregated at the enlisted men's club, there was a little bit of friction between the two companies, and there would be fights that broke out.
Yeah.
Well, when I first got there, it was actually during. I got there in February of 1968, and it was actually during Tet Offensive, and so my first experience there was they put me with a cook in the mess hall, and said, we want you to, because we don't have any assignment for you right now. We'll let you assist the cook. So essentially, I was on some kind of KP duty, for the time being, and so suddenly while we were working in there, rockets started coming in. Found myself hiding underneath the table with the mess cook. And I never experienced anything like that before, certainly, but it was the first of things to happen. In the company, we had actually 30 dozers. 2 of them were bull blades that were used to push up the berms around our night defensive positions, and then also to dig the garbage sump where we would burn our garbage, and then the other 28 dozers were all dedicated to cutting the jungle as Rome plows. To say that 28 were operating at one time, it would be inaccurate, because a lot of them were down and even deadlined from some of the previous action, and some had been had hit mines. Yes, one in particular that stands out to me is, and it's actually in my first book, Clearing Vietnam. I wrote about the fact that on one particular occasion, when I was up near an area called Song Bay, we were cutting alongside the road there. I was on the back side of the cut, and it was late in the day, and my tractor broke a hydraulic line and started spraying all this hot oil out towards me. And so, generally we're told when a hydraulic line breaks, you got to shut the whole tractor down. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and I sat there still with my tractor in the cut, and waited for the 548 maintenance track to come around and fix the problem, replace the part. I waited, and it started getting darker and darker. No maintenance track, and then it got pitch black, dark. We've never been out there in that at that time frame, So I'm thinking something's wrong. Something's got to be wrong, because they should have been over here. So I was there till about 9 o'clock at night, I think, or 9:30, something like that. And I'm out here by myself in Charlie's country, you might say.
No night vision yet.
No night vision. And I didn't, I had all these doubts going on in my head. I'm in his territory, and it was just shooting adrenaline throughout me. And so all I could do was grab my M16 out of the cab and go down and sit on the yoke that's behind the blade, and hope everything's going to be okay. And if I saw any unwanted figure coming over the bars of the tractor, then I at least had a vantage point where I could fire. But fortunately, as the time grew later, I started seeing lights coming my way. Turns out it was an APC with other people on it from the security, and they brought a tank out also, and our 548 track, and they finally found me and got back. And when I got back to the NDP, I was kind of angry. I had to talk to my platoon sergeant and say, what the heck happened? He said, well, common mistake, we miscounted. Because usually at the end of the day, they count the plows and say, okay, we got them all, let's go. In this case, they thought they had them all, but they didn't. So, and for me, that was a traumatic experience because, there was a potential there where I could have been possibly killed if I was discovered or made a POW, who knows. Yeah. We had a guy one time in my outfit where somebody else knocked a tree over and it landed on his cab, and it crushed the cab to such degree where his head was stuck in there where the crush part of it was all around him here, and he couldn't get his head out. And it freaked him out. And even to this day, he's got PTSD from it. There were times actually when there weren't enough people coming out because there was more of a demand later on for these Rome plows and the operators for them. So in my unit, there was less of a availability for the 62 Echo 20s. So we had to take and train people who were 12 Bravo, who were infantrymen, never had experience on heavy equipment, and put them on there. But they adapted quite well. It was just, here's the cut, here's the area, and the guy that was the lead plow, he wore a headset to where he communicated with what they call a loach or type helicopter overhead. It was either with the company commander up there on the horn or the platoon leader, and they would actually guide the lead plow on this, what they called the trace, and take them essentially to outline that particular trace, and then all these other tractors would follow behind. But when I was a lead plow, I noticed, it's a little disconcerting that you don't see anything. You're just going straight on through this heavy, thick jungle, and that's all you see. And so you got to rely on whatever the guidance is that they're giving me from up above, because they're watching everything. They're telling you, turn certain degrees to the left in order to evade this bomb crater or whatever else. So it worked. It was great the way they, worked it out to where the system itself was something that was really functional. The lead plow in echelon formation, and just kept cutting out this, what they called the trace, to the point where they kept going around and around and around until they got it done, and then they start another one. So that's essentially what these operations were about. You'd start one sector and cut that all out before moving to the next sector, and then you keep moving down the road and down the road and down the road. Yeah. Well, I think it was more important than the rest of the world might think, simply because it improved the security in Vietnam tremendously. The infantry units that we worked for from time to time thanked us profusely for helping them, and because it opened up the landscape to where they could see better, and they were ambushed less. And then also with regard to the roadside cutting that we did, it essentially ended all of the different ambushes that had occurred in many areas along these roads, because that was just a bloody situation. They'd come out they'd hide in the brush until the convoys came, and then they'd come out there, show themselves, and they'd light it up with their RPGs or AK-47s. Yeah. So I'm so gratified to know that what we did in that regard saved a tremendous amount of lives over there, countless lives. And to suggest that that's maybe of lesser importance than most of the other jobs over there, I would take issue with that. Well, that's a question that we're working on, but because I'd like that to happen, but no, frankly, we're not. There are still a lot of people out there that don't know what the land clearers did in Vietnam, and I've written 2 books about all of that, and in order to try to help get the word out about it. But what we did was something unique and actually historic in its own right, simply because tactical land clearing was never anything that any engineer outfit ever did. That was a new designation entirely. Who knows, maybe 6 months in, you settle in with these guys, some of whom were there before me and were veterans of what we were doing, and yeah. But this is why we have these reunions that we gather with, because we know the importance of it and appreciate it still, and it's heart-rendering to where it's meaningful to us now. We all have that same feeling. Yeah. I would say it would be good for them to, pay attention to what they're learning and pick up on it, because some of that is going to stay with them for the rest of their life, and they're going to keep some of those aspects. There's a lot of value that came out from my experiences with the Army, to where it carried over with me. I wound up later on. I had my own home repair business, and that's because I learned a lot when I was a land clearer. These things transfer from what you learn. Essentially, this is my first book, Clearing Vietnam. It's a memoir of my 18-month tour as a land clearer operating a Rome plow. And the second book it just came out recently in last December, called Tales from the Cut. It covers more of the history of land clearing in Vietnam from the beginning and how it was conceived. There are also numerous short stories in here from contributors, other former land clearers who gave me their short stories to put in here, and it gives a broader perspective on the different takes and different jobs that were involved with land clearing, because there are company commanders stories in there. There are medics, mechanics. So not everybody had the exact same experience, so it gives a more well-rounded version of it, essentially. And I've had people tell me with my first book, because it's actually all about me. It's a memoir of my 18-month tour as a land clearer, and I've had people come up to me and say, "Terry, I have to say, your story is my story." So, he said, "I did pretty much the same things you did, but you told it really well, and that I appreciated." That was my goal, to try to put the story out there as close to the heart as I could. Yeah.